Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here, and here is
Becky.
Number 33.
Wow.
Not so much about numbers this week. But it went really well. People loved it. People just love numbers, I think.
Yes, they do.
The comments were so positive.
You mean for last week's one?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was good.
They just love the financial reports, I think.
That's it. As soon as you put financial report, I think everybody just goes...
Exactly. And then, so we should do more of this.
Yes.
But we're not going to bother you with numbers today. We're going to talk a lot about Z9.
Juicy. Yes, because apparently there have been leaked specs on Nikon Rumours, and pretty much since the moment that leaked specs article came out, we were inundated with people saying, oh, please make sure that my position on the list is firm. Yes, we still actually don't know when the camera's being released. However, the leaked specs are that they claim it's going to be.
However, the waiting list has been opened already for 2 years.
It has been open since the Z7 came out. It's actually when the Z6 and Z7 came out, people immediately said, I want the Z9 because this one doesn't do everything I want.
Because that's the one, because it's got number 9 in it.
That's right.
But a lot of leaks, a lot of specs are based on the images that are circulating from Olympics that have their EXIF data removed. And when we have the EXIF data removed from the images, we think, they don't want us to know something.
It's very suspicious. So Nikon Rumours do claim it to be a D6 speed beast combined with D850 resolution. The resolution, guess, is based on the EXIF data.
So yeah, the pixel resolution is 8256 by 5504. It sounds like a telephone number.
So yeah, so it's a 45 megapixel, we think.
Exactly, but when they say it's a D850 combined with D6, they don't mean actually the sensor of D850, which is 46 megapixels. It's a brand new, fully stacked sensor, which has similar resolution to the 850 sensor.
Exactly. It is interesting to note that Canon decided to go with a 24 megapixel sensor for their R3.
That's true. And a lot of people actually wrote it off based on this. I would wait and see because I don't like to write off things before they came out. I also don't like to praise things before they come out. Z9 is not the savior that we're all waiting for. Let's just keep the hype at the normal level and then be pleasantly surprised, because if you're not pleasantly surprised, we're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything disappointing about what we're seeing. But anyway, the Z9 will apparently be capable of up to 120 frames per second in a lower res file size. Some reports even indicated 160 frames per second.
That's a lot of frames per second, isn't it?
Why?
Well, if you're sports and wildlife photographer, well, yes. Imagine you have a butterfly flying and I don't know what speed they're flapping with their wings,
Yeah, but if you can't get it in 120 frames per second, you're not going to get it in 106.
If you can't get it in one shot, you're not a professional photographer. This is a famous quote by Cartier-Bresson.
Oh, really?
No. But it's good to have those things.
Okay, yes.
Look, we're talking about speed on steroids, speed, you see. So it means fast, isn't it? So, and if you can get 120 frames per second or 160 frames per second, that means you can definitely capture a decisive moment, regardless if you've taken a shot or not. Well, you probably would need to take a shot anyway.
Yes.
But if you think about it, okay, before we had like 10 frames per second, we got 20 frames per second. Now, 120 frames per second quartet is at 6 megabyte file. So that means a fairly low resolution, right? So we need to keep that in mind, but the option is there for high-speed photography. But assuming that we have it at 6 megabytes, maybe you'll get like something like 30 or 60 frames per second at full resolution. And think about that, to have that many shots, so the amount of data the camera has to produce, you have to have really, really fast readout on the sensor and also really fast process to read all this data as well.
Yes, for sure. It will be interesting to see how that translates in the real world. I mean, so the D6 was 14 frames per second. The D5 was 14 frames per second with mirror up. Okay. And natively was 12. And I guess that's one of the beauties of mirrorless is that
you eliminate the mirror.
Yeah.
So there's less mechanical movement as well.
Exactly.
And then if you start to use electronic shutter on top of this, then you can even get more frame rate. But I'm sure that, let's say, with the mechanical shutter, it will be a little bit lower.
Yeah, so that will be useful for our sports and wildlife photographers for sure.
Of the world.
We're also expecting built-in GPS, probably GNSS, which is Global Navigation Satellite System.
Yeah, and then we covered that before. So that's basically the one that fits them all. So it includes GPS, which is kind of Western navigation system. And then we have GLONASS, which is Russian. We got a couple of Asian ones. So they all combine together. So wherever you are in the world, you're not going to get lost. You can always connect your Z9 to a little satellite.
That's right.
In space.
Instead of using Polaris to guide your way.
Absolutely.
The Z9 will use the same battery as the D6. Now, it looks like it's going to be a new 18 type. So I would assume 18D.
Yeah, that's the next one in line, isn't it?
Unless they skip a letter there somewhere. And that should be able to be charged via the camera's USB-C port, which will be very good.
So you can basically charge the battery while you're filming, which is a good thing. You can also will have a separate charger as well. So which is, spoiler alert, will be MH33, but we will come back to it a bit later.
Okay.
So you're going to have different options there, so which is quite good. And the good news is because it's going to use NL18D battery, let's say, it will be retro compatible with A, B, and C 18 batteries as well.
Yes.
Probably with low capacity, but they still will be usable. So for people who are switching from their, let's say, flagship DSLRs, that's going to be quite useful. So it's just less money to spend on accessories.
Exactly. I actually have some old ENL 15s from my D600 back in the day that I used in the Z6. They don't last very long. But if you're in a pinch, you can get through another sort of couple of hours of shooting.
And they still work.
Yeah, still work fine. And same cradle and everything, which is
That's
useful.
true.
So I'm intrigued about this MH33 thing you've mentioned now. This excites me very much. The sensor has a multi-leaf blade protective shutter that auto covers the sensor when it's switched off or when you're changing lenses to stop dust and dirt on getting onto the naked sensor.
So there are a couple of things here. So a lot of people confuse with the leaf shutter, which is basically on Hasselblad lenses, on some medium format lenses, you have a shutter built into the lens and it's a leaf time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think, oh, that's going to allow for, fast sync speeds with the studio lights. This has nothing to do with it. This is actually a separate curtain that protects the sensor from the dust entering it. So if you look at current Z cameras, if you remove the lens, the sensor is fully exposed. So that thing will protect it. So it's not actual mechanical shutter that's in the camera because those are quite fragile. You don't want to touch those.
No.
So it's going to be something a little bit more robust to protect the sensor, and it's going to happen automatically when you turn off the camera.
Well, I, for one, very much like that idea because nobody likes a dirty sensor.
Definitely. And hopefully that will trickle down into the future cheaper releases.
Yeah, exactly. It is also supposedly going to have car autofocus in addition to the animal and people AF that we've got, and low light AF performance down to -7 EV.
That's true. I've heard that machines are going to take over soon. So it's worth having those things built in already, isn't it?
Car autofocus. I wonder if it'll do motorbikes as well. But anyway, it could be useful for some of our sort of racing. I'm trying to think, what do people...
Well, boats, canoes, do you think skateboard AF?
Maybe.
That would work as well? It's good to have. The more, the merrier.
Yes. I would like them to add more animals as well.
That's true.
Not just the dogs and cats, but I'd also like bunnies.
Yeah,
birds.
I agree.
Birds would be a great one.
Yeah, wild cats as well.
Wild cats, yeah.
Did we use Animal AF on our sanctuary trip?
I did use it for
Did it work?
bit. It was fine, but the thing is that some of the big cats they don't have conventional shaped cat proportions, if you see what I mean. And also one thing that Rishi mentioned, because he was there for our little trip, I think you might see him once during the video that we released on YouTube, but he just he came along for the day because he was very kindly bringing us a 180 to 400 to try out. And he pointed out that the animal AF essentially is looking for 2 black dots. So when you're taking a picture of like a leopard, for example, the animal IAF is going to get very confused because it's covered in dots.
I thought it was looking for dog tag.
No?
Okay.
Anyway, this whole animal AF really does perplex me because if you take a picture of a dog or a cat with an iPhone, it recognizes the whole shape of the animal. Even the other day when I was at yours and Tilly was there and I pointed my phone towards her, it picked out the whole shape of her. And the same with my cats. The Nikon cameras, they really need to see the eyes.
Yeah, so they better step up, isn't it? So it just tells us that I think Western development is a lot more advanced than Asian at the moment. So, and I think it would be interesting if those companies, photographic companies, would start to employ people maybe working in Apple.
For the tech companies.
For the tech companies, absolutely. Because a lot of it is software nowadays. And we can clearly see, let's say, like Silicon Valley or even, let's say, European Silicon Valleys of the world are, well, a lot more advanced in this space.
Yeah, and as it is just a software development, it's not going to require a big change of a camera in order to implement. So anyway, watch this space on that one. We are also hoping for improved 3D tracking. That's what it looks like. I would assume that's a given considering the camera. And an improved articulated screen that even works in portrait mode. It is an entirely new design.
Very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. So I wonder the reason why we had it kind of taped up with a duct tape or gaffer tape in your parts of the world, that maybe the design wasn't completed at the stage.
Potentially, or maybe they didn't want it to be revealed because it's so obvious that
That's
it's a
true.
completely new design that way.
That's true.
And that would have been a bit of a spoiler.
Alert. We also get new style locking flap for the 2 CF Express memory cards. So I guess we probably will get maybe slightly better weather sealing.
Yes, exactly. When you look at the Zs and they have that kind of pop out flap, it might be a little bit too prone to opening. So,
But then if you look at D6, it's got this proper design with all the O-rings around.
Yes.
So I guess it's to do with the weather sealing.
Makes sense. We've also got a third joystick.
I haven't
selector.
seen it on the pictures.
No, I didn't. Added to use whilst the camera is close face and shooting. So we have, I suppose what it is like on the D6, you've got your normal multi-selector, you've got your portrait mode multi-selector, toggle thingy, and now you've got the higher up one. You know, the D6, D5 has the higher up one? Yeah, well, it's so that when you've got your face to the camera,
you can move it around.
You don't poke yourself in the eye. It's positioned so that you can kind of reach it while looking through the viewfinder.
This camera comes with 3 joysticks.
It's almost like it's actually better than a PS5 controller.
Absolutely. You got only one there.
There are many new menu features to tweak and match your shooting style, supposedly. So more customization. I'm hoping for a bit of U1, U2, U3 action.
That's true, because generally kind of the menu systems on Nikon cameras, they've been around for years. We kind of all know how to navigate them. So if you're going to get some sort of overhaul, I wonder if it's going to be a design overhaul or we're just going to get a bunch of new features. And if you're going to get a bunch of new features, that means that maybe the camera will do something that hasn't been done before. You never know.
Yeah, it's true. The shutter release sound level can be adjusted from silent to loud, so you can still get that D6 machine gun sound.
Oh, yes.
Insert the sound of a D6 shutter here. Click, 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 click.
Do you think you can just do different ringtones as well?
Maybe. The official announcement is expected in the next 2 months, according to Nikon Rumours, but do not expect many cameras to ship before the end of the year because of part shortage. The waiting time for the Z9 is expected to be very long.
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to say that probably we'll hear the announcement around end of August till end of September.
Yeah, and then physical camera in our hands, in the shop, probably not for at least a month to 2 months after that. And that would just be a very tiny amount, I would imagine.
I would say the whole hype about this camera once the announcement is made, because obviously now a lot of goodwill going for it just based on leak specification, etc.
Yeah.
A lot of it will depend on what camera does, so just what the real specifications are and what does it do differently from, let's say, what cameras that do exist, the autofocus performance and the price. Based on those 3 things, we'll either get a huge uptake and the camera is going to be out of stock, or we will get just professional involved and everyone will say, well, I'll wait for something cheaper.
Yes, exactly.
Now, one thing I want to mention, so 45 megapixels. As I was saying on our live stream last time, the D850 user of me wants to have a higher resolution sensor.
Yes.
It's just because I'm so used to 45 megapixels that for me, I want improvement there. It doesn't mean that we need a lot of megapixels, but it's just a wishful thinking of having, like, give me 50 or 60, just a higher number, and I'll be happy. But if you start to, you know...
Is it psychological?
It is psychological. It's nothing to do with actual... We as people think irrationally, right? So it's just like, you know, it's in my brain. It says, oh, it's worth the money now, even if it's like 47 megapixels and not 45.
If they make it 47 megapixels, will you be happy?
That's it. Just, you know, order placed, house remortgaged. But if you start to think, not from D850 point of view, but from D6 point of view, which is 20 megapixels, The jump to 46 is huge while maintaining all the speed, but actually being faster.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to start to think about. So yes, it's a huge step from D6. Yes, maybe it's going to be a good combination from users coming from D850 as well, but it's also will depend on the price, because if the price is, let's say it's something like 6-7K, then a lot of D850 users will wait for Z8. If the price is lower, then they may start to consider. Mm-hmm. And then obviously a lot of keen enthusiasts, professional photographers from wildlife to sports to reportage probably will switch to that camera. So we will start to see maybe a lot of news agencies as well.
Yes. Now, I have a personal feeling on this is that I don't want Nikon to make it too cheap, because what I've understood is that we've looked at rumors that have said it's going to be whatever, 6,500, something like that. And then we've had the other side of things saying, well, if it's a competitor potentially for the D850, it's going to have to be cheaper, maybe 3,500. I don't want Nikon to make it too cheap as a product, because we've got our flagship DSLR at £6,300. At the moment, what's your feeling? Where do you think they're going to put it?
It's a difficult one because the market is there for taking. So that's why it's nice to make it cheaper. When we say cheap, we have A1. That's what we compare it to. So that one is what, 6.5 in UK, yeah, British grade pounds, yeah. So that's including 20% VAT, right? So that's about 6 or something like this. I'm bad with math, but. When we say cheap, it means if it's lower in price than A1. So if it's at 6 or maybe 5.5, that is a good statement.
Yes.
Because not only your camera, it has a built-in grip and looks all the way professional, which we like. The bigger the camera, the more professional you look. No. But that's a big statement for Nikon to do, and it's a very aggressive statement.
Yes.
That way you're going to get a lot of goodwill, and that just will give us an idea that maybe the later camera they will produce will be even cheaper.
Potentially.
Which could be completely incorrect. Z8 could come out without the grip and cost maybe £1,000 less. So it's not going to be like £2,000 less comparably. No. So you never know. But it really depends, because if you come out at, let's say, £6,500 or £7,000, you have a big ask for people to buy it, and you also will have a more niche product. So a lot of people will write it off just based on I can't afford it. As simple as that. And then we start to get a lot of comparisons with A1, etc., etc.
Yes.
If you make it cheaper and it's actually better, we will see what's going to happen.
Yes. Okay. Let the games begin, sort of thing. Right. Moving on. Later that week, Nokishita confirmed that the camera with the code name November 2014 is indeed a Z9 and will come with ENL18D battery and MH33 battery charger, so which we reported last week. Now, the interesting thing about this battery, so it's 10.8 volt and 3,300 mAh. That's quite a large capacity battery. And a lot of mirrorless cameras now are getting very hungry for the energy. There's a lot of electronic things that's happening there, and a lot of data to process. Yes.
So that's number one. Now, MH33 charger as well has input of 5 volts and output of 12.6 volts. Again, it's a high energy output. So which means several things, that the charging time could be quite fast, which you will need for quite high capacity battery, first of all. The second is that if it has a USB-C connector, which looking at those input 5 volt specs, potentially tell me that it could be USB-C. Okay,
and do you think it's going to be a double charger?
That's my thinking. Okay. It has to be. Unless you can justify that you can charge one battery in camera and one on the charger. So you still can charge 2 batteries, but if they would release a double charger, that would be amazing. I think, I'm not sure Sony does double charger, but I know that GFX 100S, you can order double charger for it. So they don't include it.
But you can pay the extra $.
Exactly. And it looks like Nikon will include their charger.
Yes.
So, but hopefully, they used to do obviously double chargers for their flagship cameras like D5, D6. So I hope they will continue that tradition.
Yes, absolutely. There is another rumor out there that the next 2 lenses to come out from Nikon will be an 85 1.2. You know how we saw that mystery 85 on the roadmap? Oh, yes.
The silhouette.
Yeah, so an 85 1.2 and a 400 f2.8, which we already knew a 400 was due. Now we've got a rumored aperture of f2.8, which is not unexpected, I would say. The rumor is that both will be announced in the next few months. The 400 should be announced with the Z9 and should hopefully have a built-in teleconverter as well, just like the F-mount 180 to 400 f4e TC 1.4 FLED VR.
So we'll push it to what, 560 millimeters focal distance, isn't it?
Yes. So that would be quite interesting, I think. And I've seen not just that rumor that you've put in there, but I've seen that in a couple of places that people have suggested there might be a built-in teleconverter with the primes.
But I can see a lot of use of having built-in teleconverter.
Yes. You know how we used that 180 to 400, keep coming back to that.
Yeah,
but when we used that, it was so smooth to switch.
Absolutely. And that's on the Big Sanctuary video that we have out this week. So do check it out.
Yep. Big Cat Sanctuary.
Big Cat Sanctuary. Imagine you're a football photographer and you've got similar lens, let's say, and you need to photograph people. Let's say you're in the middle of the pitch and you need to photograph people on the left-hand side right there and the right-hand side. It's so easy to switch, let's say, from 400 to 600 by just moving that switch. Instead of, let's say, removing the lens, putting a new one in. Of course, you can have two cameras, but some people can't afford that.
No.
So I can see there's a lot of potential there. One thing I can say about H512, well, as a portrait photographer, I would love this lens. I think Nikon has a lot kind of more priorities in terms of lens releases, and I think they need to release more longer lenses for now.
I would agree with that. I would also say that when it comes to a lens with a built-in teleconverter, I wonder if this is because it's easier to design and produce a prime over a zoom and then just have an included teleconverter in it. And I wonder if that's why they're choosing the 400 first before anything else.
Generally, yes. And then obviously we need the longer zooms, right? So something like 100 to 400 or 200 to 600.
Those are both on the roadmap.
Exactly. And well, let's say for professional photographers, the F-mount lenses are still there.
Yeah.
And of course, if you need to buy one now, then you may want to wait a little bit. But a lot of professional photographers shooting with D6s, they already have these lenses. And they probably won't buy the new lens straight away. They would wait. So it's good to have those lenses. And 120 to 300 is fantastic. And from my personal opinion, can't afford one, would love to have one.
Yeah.
So those lenses are there. But also, I think we need some consumer long lenses. So something, let's say, like 70 to 300.
That would be ideal, particularly if you're someone who doesn't shoot a lot of telephoto. If you're not a pro photographer and you just want the occasional telephoto, that's my kind of domain. I don't shoot long very often at all. So 70 to 300 in a light form lens would be perfect.
That's the thing. And the reason why I say consumer, because consumers won't really look into F-mount 70 to 300 version, use them with FTZ adapter, because that becomes a bit too difficult for them.
It's just, I mean, it's unnecessarily complicated.
That's the thing. For pros, generally using FTZ adapter with the F-mount lenses, it's normal thing. You know, for consumers buying their first camera, that's some of those things can get a little bit complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Next one up, Nikon updated their Q&A section of their Q1 financial results.
So they ask questions such as, is the Q2, as in second quarter, forecast low compared to the actual results of Q1?
Yeah, for some of you who watched actual financial report last week, so me, my mom, and Tilly, we know that the Q1 was about their like 70% of all income, and then the second half is about 30%.
And that's
roughly.
that's the forecast, right?
Exactly. So the question was, why do you expect lower income in the second half? That was the question. And they basically said that we expect it to be lower based on several things. We're not sure how the COVID is going to develop. Number one, also, the COVID is now on another wave in Thailand, which a lot of Z products are being produced. And that reduces the amount of workers at the factories.
Right.
So that's something that we haven't heard before. We've heard about supply and demand issues on the semiconductors and shortages of parts to produce 28 millimeter lens. But actually COVID impact on human beings not being able to come to work and make the lenses, that's something we haven't heard before. So that's a new thing that I've learned from that Q&A.
Yeah, they're operating in consideration of the health for their employees.
Absolutely. Nikon Japan continues to publish their response to coronavirus on their website, so you can always read to that. And they strictly follow the government guidance on that.
They've also said, could you provide us with information about a forecast for revenue in the second half?
In second half, they expect sales revenue will be at 85 billion yen. Okay. So, which is similar to what they predicted in May this year.
Right. If you'd like to read the rest of that article, we will pop a link in the description box and the podcast notes so you can read all of the information there. Nikon Rumors have published additional real-world photographs of different colors of the ZFC.
Yeah, shall we have a look at it together?
Yeah.
All right, there was a mint green one, and there was also a leather tan brown.
So this is interesting because the box matches. Is that the box?
No, it's a Tiffany box.
Oh my God.
Do you reckon? But it matches so perfectly. So I wonder if they actually
did it on purpose?
said exactly. There's like, what's the Pantone color of Tiffany box? And they designed it this way. It's an interesting one. It actually looks quite good. I'm not particularly keen on that tan brown leathery type.
It's funny because in the flesh, it's quite orange.
Yeah. So that's why I don't like it. I prefer it a little bit slightly darker.
Yeah, I can see that.
But it could be a lighting as well that could affect that. The point of including this article, Becky, is not actually the real-life pictures of different colors of that FC. It's the question why Nikon decided to sell those colors in Japan and United States through their own store and not via the dealers. And my question is that because of that, Nikon Europe decides not to sell the colors full stop, just not to upset the dealers? What do you think?
Potentially. I don't know if Nikon had that thought in mind when they decided not to do the colors. It's a little bit like in the UK, we don't have an FTZ kit because it would double the quantity of different kit variants that we would need to stock. So instead, Nikon have decided in Europe and the UK, or certainly in the UK, actually, I can't speak for Europe, have decided to reduce the amount or the price of the FTZ if you're buying a ZFC. So if you go to our website and you buy a ZFC, you can put in a code, you get the £85 discount on the FTZ, which basically makes it a kit price. So I wonder if it's logistically just a little bit too difficult for Europe to manage.
That's true. But then imagine, let's say, if Nikon UK sells the cameras through their store, which we can't supply, that potentially will make us upset. Because we say, well, why can't we have those good things? And I wonder if that came into consideration. Let me tell you a story. Back in the day where consoles like PlayStation and Xbox didn't have digital stores. Everything was sold physically in companies like GameStop. You heard that before, right? So you would have to go and buy a physical game in a shop.
Yeah.
Then they started to introduce their digital store where you could buy now directly from them, software purchase.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies like GameStop started to complain because they say, well, now we are losing sales.
Yes.
So I just wonder, this is just my crazy theory. I wonder if they thought maybe if we can't supply it by the dealers, let's just cancel the whole thing. I don't know.
Potentially. It's a good question. We don't have the answer, but I do like to think that Nikon are looking out for their dealers' interests in Europe. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I'd like to hope so.
Ask your local wheeler dealer.
This is a good point. I don't think that Nikon, certainly Nikon Japan, I don't know about Nikon in the USA, but I don't think that they expected these cameras to be as popular in the different color options that they provided. I think that they thought, oh, well, a few people will want to go for the different colors, but the majority will want the standard color. So let's give the dealers the standard one because that will be the most popular. And then suddenly we've had this influx of requests for different colored ones. So
okay, well, let's ask the viewers and our listeners if you are on the market for ZFC. So if you're not buying one, we're not interested. So if you're on the market for ZFC, would you buy a classic, Panda version, as they call it, or would you go for one of the special colors? Do let us know in the comments below.
Next up, Nikon won 4 2021-2022 EISA Photography Awards. Now, EISA is the Expert Imaging and Sound Association. So they have awarded, what am I saying? They have awarded the Z5 as the EISA Best Buy camera. Interesting. The Z6 II won Best Advanced Camera. The best pro telephoto zoom lens came out as the 70 to 200 2.8 S lens.
Oh, wow.
And the best macro lens was my beloved 50mm f2.8 MC.
Well, I'm pleased with that one.
Yeah. If you'd like to have a look at the EISA awards listings, then do click on the link in the description box or the podcast
Absolutely.
notes.
It's one of the awards that everyone gets one just for being there.
You attended. Here's your award.
Just like at school. Here's the medal.
Okay, next one is one that I am going to vehemently protest.
All right, this is a difficult one because, all right, there's a lot of websites keep reporting this as a weekly thing. They report as Nikon discontinued more f-mount lenses. Now, what I think they should have reported is that Nikon Japan website continues to list many f-mount lenses as old products.
Yeah. Old products and discontinued is a slightly different thing. And as I've said to a couple of people on the phone recently who have panicked, old products to Nikon Japan means that the products are not necessarily going to be made in Japan anymore. We already know that. We've covered the fact that the lenses and bodies are not going to be produced in Japan anymore. So old products doesn't mean discontinued. It means that the manufacturing process is no longer happening in Japan. Obviously, there will be some f-mount lens discontinuation, but when it's the likes of the 16-35 f4, which is a current lens. Actually, it's made in Thailand, so I didn't even know it's on that list. But anyway.
Now, I really like how you cut in the mustard, Becky, because a lot of all those old products are still available for order by dealers in UK and in stock as well.
Yeah, very much so. In terms of stock, just
nothing to see here.
Don't let's not talk about stock. No. But it's true. F-mount stuff, I mean, F-mount lenses are more readily available, generally speaking,
than Z stuff.
So there we go.
All right. And
this one's for you.
Let's move to Russia. Nikon Russia opened a new Nikon Plaza in Moscow.
Yay.
So for any of you who speaks Russian, you're welcome to look at the video below where you get a tour around the Red Square, but in the Nikon store.
До свидания.
Brat.
Okay.
I say balalaika.
Vodka.
Matryoshka.
I was just going to say
Babushka.
Da. Those are the words I know in Russian.
And the next one up is the one that we like the most because we can't understand the word it says.
Okay, so Aeva Technologies partners with Nikon for industrial measurement tools. This is one of those, we like it because Nikon are expanding their frontiers, but we don't know what it means. So as of August 10, Aeva Technologies Inc. on Tuesday said it's partnered with the Nikon Corporation to use Aeva's three-dimensional mapping sensors.
Yeah, so those are LiDAR sensors, right? What they do in cars, so in electric vehicles, those are the sensors that are normally all cameras on the side of the car. And what they do, they measure at the front. So if they see if there's someone moved in front of you, if there's a bump and things like this. So that's what's called mapping device. So they're effectively mapping the surface in front of you.
Yeah.
So that's what Aeva used to do. And they have people coming from Apple and all sorts of companies and industries. So now they partnered with Nikon to use this technology effectively, not for cars, but for some industrial use.
Aeva chief executive said, because the costs are lowered, we can broaden adoption. The idea is that any manufacturing line in the future can have these devices to ensure its quality. Nice generic statement there. So it looks like, although they haven't disclosed the financial terms of the deal, Nikon said they aim to release the first product based on Aeva's sensor by 2025.
Absolutely. And then just one bit about the cars. Nikon has a division that makes tools used by automakers such as BMW to create high-precision three-dimensional scans of cars during the manufacturing process. Excellent. So they already do those things.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, next up, Viltrox will soon release more AF lenses for the Nikon Z mount. Apparently, they have just released a 24 1.8Z.
Yes, and this is autofocus. Now, we have a lot of companies, third-party companies, releasing manual focus lenses for that system. Now, we generally not covering them anymore because there's so many of them every week. And I think maybe we'll do the whole podcast just about them. But the reason why the third-party manufacturer is interesting because it's actually releasing autofocus lenses for Z mount.
Yes.
And effectively what they did is they probably reverse engineered the autofocus system of Z camera. So 24mm lens is now available. They already had 85mm lens.
That's right, which Rishi reviewed, didn't
Exactly. And then if you want to have a look at the new reviews for 24mm, they're now available by Richard Warren and PhotoMe Like channel. Then there will be 35 1.8Z lens, which is now available for pre-orders. Now, soon to be released 50mm 1.8Z full frame. And then we'll have 3 DX lenses, 23mm 1.4, 33mm 1.4, and 56mm 1.4 lenses.
Interesting focal lengths. I mean, obviously they're APS-C, so they convert But that's very, very interesting. If you'd like to have a look at any of those reviews, including Rishi's review on the 85 1.8, we'll pop it in the description box and in the podcast notes. Head to head, Adobe Lightroom Classic versus Capture One 21 by DPReview.
They just went for it.
For some reason, they only focus on speed.
Yes. So I read the whole article and they don't discuss image quality.
Oh.
They just talk about the speed and how it's optimized for the new process, etc., etc. So I really hope that the part 2 will eventually exist. Now, one interesting thing that they mentioned that they don't like Adobe for the subscription model because Lightroom CC is effectively you have to pay a monthly subscription.
That's right.
Which is, I think, about £10 a month in UK. Phase 1 has also a subscription model, but you can also buy a full version.
Right.
And if you want to be up to date, you just pay it every year. And that amounts to about the same money as you would pay for Adobe subscription.
Right.
Now, the benefit of this is if you don't buy cameras very often and you don't want to be up to date, you can buy a version now and maybe skip a year and then buy a new version 2 years later.
I like that.
That's a benefit of it. But on another side, the photographer subscription that Adobe has also come with Adobe Bridge and most importantly with Adobe Photoshop.
Yes.
And I don't think you can beat that package for that amount of money.
No.
Now, hypothetically, the price can increase and they want to lock you into their cloud, etc., etc. But if you look at what's available now, I think both packages are quite competitive.
There we go. You heard it first here from Con. Right. Next up, our review. So we have the Nikon Z70-200 f2.8 VRS lens tested at DxO Mark. It gets a score of 38, 39 being the highest at the moment.
So it's on the second place just after Sony lens. Now, what do they say, Becky, about 70-200?
Well, they say over the years, the 70-200 f2.8 lenses have become one of the most important products in a manufacturer's lineup, as its performance is considered a barometer for the rest of the high-end lenses in the system. As such, they're regularly updated and feature the latest optical advances. So it's unsurprising to see that the 70-200 2.8 VRS easily outperforms the old 2009 70-200 2.8 ED VR2, which is now 2 generations behind. With the new SR element backing up the fluorite and ED elements, the new Nikon Z70-200 is a great performer optically and is a fine addition to the Z system overall. If sports, wildlife, photojournalism, or even portraiture is your thing, it would make a great choice.
All right. Well, now let's quickly move to a comment section of Nikon Rumours. This article didn't go well, and a lot of people are not agreeing with assessment of DxO, and we'll just leave you there, and it's up to you.
Whether you want to read it or not.
Exactly.
For your weekend read and watch segment. So first up, Joe McNally has written an extensive blog. He calls it his field notes from the Tokyo Olympics. The latest article is What's in the Bag. It's well worth a read, but there are a ton of articles on there with some fabulous images. Obviously, we're assuming that Joe at some point has been using the Z9. We don't know for sure. He said nothing. What's it call us?
We are always open for the right calls.
But do have a look at his blog. It is full of fascinating anecdotes and articles and always well worth a read.
Absolutely. And if you don't like to read and like to watch things, then let's move on to This Week on YouTube.
So Christopher Frost published his review of the ZMC 50mm f2.8 lens with samples.
B&H compared low light capabilities of Nikon Z6 Mark II and Z7 Mark II in a photo shoot.
There you go. And Chris Dublu told us how glorious the Z9 will be once it hits shelves in the Did Nikon Dynamite Themselves video.
Well done, comrade. But we leave you with one recommendation from our viewer Sam. The video is called Pimlico, London, rare 1950s film of Thomas Cubitt's Stoker Streets by Gallery Dreams YouTube channel.
Yeah, and look out for a familiar address when you have a look at that video. It's well worth spotting if you can identify the telltale.
Shall we give them a hint?
Shop frontage.
A familiar barber shop.
There you go. That's That's it. Thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please do feel free to give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube, or how about a follow and a review on the podcast platforms?
Absolutely. If you have a rumor to share, and I'm sure there are lots of them coming through nowadays, send it to media@gracewestminster.co.uk. And if you'd like to find us on all the social medias over the world, you can find us on
Instagram, you can find me at Rebecca_Danese or at Rebecca_reads_books.
I've heard you've written books. Is that correct, Becky?
Write them, review them, I read them. Yeah.
And for all that glorious content, go to her Instagram. Now, I'm also on Instagram, but just one. It's Konstantin Kochkin.
And dual personality.
Absolutely. And we'll keep spamming you.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.
We'll see you next week. Bye.